Hello, my friends. Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works Workshop. Shop Talk number 96. We're bumping that 100 mark, and I've enjoyed every one of them. I hope you have too. The weather's turned fairly favorable for me lately. It's been in the 40s overnight the last several nights, and that just saves a ton of firewood. And of that, I am quite happy. I see people starting to scroll up the screen already. We got George French and Lee Duffield and Rick Rogers. And let's see, Omaha, Nebraska, Massachusetts, and the stock options report, whoever that is. Anyway, we're glad to have you. 43 viewers already. Michael Boyle, so they're just scrolling up the screen. We've got a good program planned for you, I think. It's not quite as complicated as the one last week where we had so many questions. We've only got 4 pre-prepared questions this time. So that means we'll just have a lot more of your live questions to answer, hopefully. The first thing I want to say is thank you for all your help with the computer. And actually, it did spark an idea that did help me fix at least put a Band-Aid on the problem. I can't say the problem is fixed, but it's at least usable. Someone asked me if I had tried the IP addresses, and so I thought, well, I'll try the IP address and ping it. And if you don't know what that is, every single device on the network has an IP address. It's three numbers in a group of 4. So there's 4 sets of 3 numbers divided by a dot, and every device has a number. And so I found the number to that computer in there, and I pinged it from this computer, and sure enough, it worked. So I thought, well, if it's pinging, that means it's definitely out there, because the ping means it's just, if you don't know what ping is, that's just sending a temporary signal over there, and it responds. And it's just, that's all it is. It's just a, are you there? And yes, I am, and that's about all it amounts to. Well, anyway, that proves, though, that you can at least talk to it. So I'm thinking, well, it's just a Windows issue. But anyway, what I did was I just mapped my drives via the IP address instead of the name. That worked. And so I've got all my drives mapped now so I can get to that computer just fine. And I don't care how I get to it as long as I get to it. And so thank you for your help on that. That did help me figure that out. Last night, I was panicking because I still couldn't get that to work, and I just got that to work this morning based on your ideas. But last night I was panicking because this software that I'm using to talk to you right now, it was working, but I had no monitor on my side. So like when I play a video, which I will do here in a minute, I couldn't hear the video playing. You could probably, but I couldn't. So I don't know. It's just one of them deals where everything was just going wrong. And then when I came in this morning, it worked. I didn't change anything, and it just worked. So I'll take a small miracle. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Anyway, the computer is sort of working. It's Windows 11, Windows 10. All of those things are always issues if you don't know a lot about that stuff. And I know enough to be more than dangerous, let's put it that way. I can get in there and switch settings with the best of them. But anyway, it's working. We have another deer season this weekend. It's just a doe season only, and I might go back out. Matter of fact, Ron and his brother are coming down, and they're going to go out and maybe try to get another deer in the freezer. Sorry, I'm belching here under my breath, sorry. But anyway, I'm going to maybe try that myself. And everything's gotten so expensive that the more meat you can have in the freezer, the better it is. And so I may do that. Just a reminder that our live Christmas show will be next Thursday at 7 o'clock p.m. I hope it's going to be just a doozy of a show. We're planning on a roughly 2 hour show with an intermission in between, and that intermission will have some video, which I have yet to produce. But we'll hopefully have some kind of entertaining video in the middle of the show that you'll enjoy. Don't know what that's going to be yet, but we'll figure it out as we go. I have mentioned this morning, and in the title of this video says the Larrivee mandolin is fixed. It ain't broken no more. So let's just jump into that. Take a look at this.
Hello, my friends. Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works workshop, and I've got some strangers that just kind of lurked in my shop here just a minute ago.
Stranger.
You can't get much stranger. No, I knew they were coming. I just thought they were coming tomorrow. That's the old man brain in me, I get everything confused these days. But they brought me a project, and when I say a project, this is one of them deals where you got your work cut out for you.
You're welcome, Jared.
So, here is the project. You notice anything wrong?
It's missing strings. It ain't got no head on it.
It ain't got no strings. No, yeah, it's another one of these. Remember the last one I did like this? I try to remember the name of that little guy that his mandolin that I repaired. I'm gonna have to do the exact same thing. We're gonna have to cut a nice long taper here and a nice long taper back here and put in a piece of matching curly wood and regrow this thing.
Well, yeah, there you go. And the name of that mandolin that I had fixed previous to that was a J. Ford mandolin. It was a homemade mandolin by J. Ford. And I fixed it for, I could even remember the customer's name, but for some reason, his name was Dutch Miller, I think it was. And anyway, it was his mandolin, and I fixed it for him. I think Dutch is out of Oklahoma. And I did exactly the same thing to that mandolin as I did to this one, except this one took one more extra step. On Dutch's, it was basically broke just about as straight off as you could get one to break off. I mean, it really was. There, obviously there's always a little bit of jaggedness, but it was pretty much just perpendicular break off. This one, not so much. This one here broke kind of like this, and it messed it up, and that was hard. So you think, well, how in the heck are you going to cut it at an angle? Because all those pieces are there, and they're not going to be back in there. And so the way I did this one, and you'll see this in the full video down the road, was I thought, I'm going to temporarily glue it back together just as it is. And so that's what I did. I just glued it back as it is. Now what that does is it puts all those fingers back together like that. It puts all those little pieces of wood back together. So they're kind of in place. Then I just took a saw and sawed it straight through. So you got some fingers pieces in that one and some finger pieces in this one, and that kind of thing. But that gave me a straight break off. Then I could saw my diagonals on the peg head and my long angle on the neck. And, it made it simple because all the little fragment pieces were in place. Anyway, that's what I did. Now, take a look at this little sucker. I'm real proud of the way this thing turned out. Look at, can you even see a break? I mean, yeah, you can really. I mean, I know you can see it, but it's barely noticeable. I mean, it looks pretty much like factory if you look at it. Yeah, it's barely noticeable. And everything was perfect until last night because it didn't want to be perfect. You know what I mean? It's one of those deals where, like, no matter what you do, something has to find a way to go wrong. And so, sure enough, it did. And if you look at the back, I had that black painted on there. Well, then I coated it with a top coat. And of course, the top coat reacted to the base coat and it cracked. So just because it could. I mean, no other reason, just to make it complicated. It's so frustrating because it worked perfectly up to that point right there. I tell you, the finishing is always, and I say it again, always the problem. It's always the problem. everything worked out just like it did, came from the factory. The only thing I had to do, and I cannot figure this out why, is I had to shim underneath this morning. Now, I don't leave a shim there. I'm going to make a new nut, but I shimmed the nut to make the strings have enough height here. I'm not sure why that is, because, you know, the way I cut this off, the original part of that is still there. I mean, like, I didn't change the height of that. And I don't know why this needs a taller nut now. I seriously cannot figure it out. And you know, I'm pretty good at figuring out stuff, so it's like, I still don't know why that's that way, because I didn't cut the slot any lower. The fingerboard went right back on the original part of the neck, because, you know, I cut a long angle up to this point here to the far side of the nut. I left the lip there for the nut to sit on. I did not cut that off. So it's just like it came from the factory, but yet this nut was way too low to make this work. Now, I cannot figure that out. But regardless, I shimmed it up and it works just fine for now. Didn't do any fret job or anything on it. I just strung it up this morning. I did that this morning before the show. So, I mean, I didn't even know if it was going to play. But it plays just fine. And the only reason it doesn't play fine is because of my hands. It's a nice mandolin, very, very nice mandolin. It looks beautiful, really just a real pretty mandolin. And I really am very proud of the way that neck turned out. I don't think it could have turned out any better. I need to put a little more finish here. I'm going to have to sand that all off, because you can't fix that. You know, you might think, well, all I'm going to do is put some more on it and sand it. It won't work. You got to sand it off. It's got to be sanded probably back down to bare wood and start over, because once it cracks, trust me, it doesn't ever fix itself. At least that's been my experience. I've tried and tried and tried to fix those kinds of things, and they don't fix. Well, anyway, I'm going to play you a Christmas song on this. I'm going to do it first instead of last this time, and that way if I run everybody off, I won't have so many questions to answer. I'm kidding. I like to answer your questions. I'm going to get my hand up here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this thing all the way through first, and then at the end, or maybe even after I end it, we'll go back into it and I'll play it and tell you the numbers, because this is a very complicated little song right here. A lot of these Christmas songs are. I'll be home for Christmas. You can count on me. Please have snow and mistletoe and presents under the tree. Christmas Eve will find me where the love light gleams. I'll be home for Christmas, if only in my dreams. I'll be home for Christmas, if only in my dream, if only in my dream. Okay, well, I'll tell you the numbers to that now. So, if you have my Nashville number system, you'll understand this. And some of you, because you don't know the Nashville number system, will say, well, this is way more complicated. But I promise you, after you learn it, this is like a piece of cake. So it's 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, back to 4. Then it's 4, 4 minor, 1 back to 6, 2 back to 5, 1, 2, 5, 6, 7 back to 4, 4, 4 minor, then 1 back to 6, then 2, 5, 1. So those are your numbers. Now, if you don't understand the number system, it's very simple. I'm going to show you the bad way to figure it out, and I don't like this method at all. I like to teach it on the mandolin. It's really easy to understand it on the mandolin, but I'm going to teach you the way everybody else seems to learn it. So you got, whatever chord you're playing in, that's 1. So G is 1, so G, and then we're jumping to the 2 chord, which is A. So G, A, B, C, D, okay? So G, we go to 2, which is A. Then we go to the 5 chord, which is D. And then we go to the 6 chord, which is E. And then the 7 chord, which is F. And then we go back down to the 4 chord, which is C. So, I mean, it's just numbers. But the chord you're playing in is always 1. And so if you tried to figure it out by this method, you got to learn it like 7 times. The way I teach you how to do it, you have only 2 patterns on the mandolin. And literally 2 patterns. So you only have to learn 2 patterns. And then you'll know where all your numbers are wherever you start. Like if you start right here, this pattern is starting on the bottom 2 strings. So it doesn't matter where you start. Anywhere you start, as long as you start on the bottom 2 strings, that's pattern number 1. Anywhere you start, if you start on the middle 2 strings, that's pattern number 2. It's really black and white, that simple. So if you ever wanted to learn how to play your mandolin much, much simpler, or even your guitar, I really do recommend that you get yourself a cheap mandolin, buy my mandolin instructions off of my website, and learn how to play the Nashville number system on the mandolin first, and then switch that over to the guitar. And I do have a method out there for the guitar. Now, the guitar is not nearly as in-depth. The guitar Nashville number system assumes, number 1, that you know how to play the guitar. The mandolin instructions assume nothing. It tells you how to hold the pick all the way to the very complicated songs. So the mandolin is very comprehensive, and I couldn't even tell you how many complimentary letters on that training. So I really do recommend it highly. I don't recommend it so much to make me rich. Whether you believe that or not, that's your business. I recommend it because I know it will make it easy for you to learn how to play and understand music better than you'll have ever understood it in the past. This just makes it so simple. Anyway, the mandolin's done. I am so tickled with that. I mean, it's done with the exception of a little bit of cosmetic work. So I've got a little bit of cosmetic work to catch back up on. But other than that, that sucker is a home run. And I am tickled with it. Okay, so we'll move on to our questions. I just have 4 questions from yesterday's video. The first one was about the rubber band rubber band that I use to wrap, and to clamp things that are odd shaped. And it's really good for binding and things like that. But the rubber band, I just took a regular old inner tube from a car or a truck, and I just took a good pair of, you kind of need a heavy duty pair of scissors, and then you just start cutting a long strip around the hole, the big hole that's in the inner tube. You just start cutting all the way around that, and then you try to keep your strips about this wide. I'm saying about 3/4 of an inch wide, and you just go around, and then you just come out 3/4 of an inch, and you come out 3/4 of an inch, and you just keep going, and you just keep going, and you just keep going. And you want the rubber band as long as you can get it. And I ended up making 2 of them. One of them was a little longer than the other one, but they're both pretty darn long. And the reason you want them that long is because on a guitar, when you're wrapping around a whole body like that, you'll use up a lot of real estate pretty fast. So you want them as long as you can, and I would say 2 of them. If you make 2 of them like that, one off of each side of the inner tube, you'll be fine. Okay, that's the rubber band explanation. Someone asked about my metal detector. I didn't bring it down here. I should have. But it's an Equinox. It's made by Mind Labs. It's an Equinox 800. It's one of the, upper echelon metal detectors. It's a pretty good one. And as far as the settings go, because they ask about the settings and things, for the most part, I just use the standard settings that are in there. However, I have tweaked it a lot on certain occasions. In other words, you can rule out anything you want to rule out. Like if you just don't want to dig any iron signals at all, you can rule those out. And I have done that. There's a way to do that on the machine. It's quite complicated. I'm not going to try to explain it now, but you can do that. So it's a very good metal detector. Now they've just come out, like within the last week, they've come out with like a Mind Labs 700 and a 900. Now mine's an 800. The 900, it makes it sound like it's going to be better than my 800, but after I saw the review of it, there's hardly any difference. So I'm real happy with my 800. I don't need to upgrade or anything. And the only thing that might be an advantage for you is if you're looking to buy one, you might be able to get into the 800 cheaper now that they've got the 700 and the 900. Prior, they had a 600 and an 800. Now they have a 700 and a 900. So, and honestly, I seriously don't see enough of a difference to care. They're almost the same detector. Anyway, that's the information on that. I also, by the way, have a Fisher metal detector, which is incredibly good for finding coins. I mean, the coin program on it is almost better in a way than the one on the Fisher. The Fisher will go, than the Mind Labs. The Fisher is a good coin program, but the Mind Labs goes much deeper. And you can't hardly fool the Mind Labs in terms of a signal being down there. If it's down there, that thing will hear it. It really is a good machine. Okay, moving on. Truss rod adjustment. Someone asked in the comments, could you give a better explanation on the truss rod adjustment? And, because what they were trying to do was adjust the action on their instrument. And they were told a long time ago that you can take the truss rod and adjust it and fix the action on your instrument. And honestly, not much more could be further from the truth. That is not the way you adjust your action at all. You do not adjust action with a truss rod. Now, can it affect your action? A little bit. It can. But it's mostly in what I always call the underbow. They like to use that great term relief because it sounds cooler. But really, you're just talking about a bow in your neck. And your truss rod is supposed to be designed, and I tell you, a lot of them these days are not designed properly, in my opinion. It's supposed to be designed that when you tighten it, it does this. It straightens out that neck. All it does is take the underbow out. It does not change this angle at all. It doesn't change that at all. And that's the angle that will affect your action much more. So how do you change this angle? You do that at your nut, I mean, aside from a neck reset, of course, a neck reset would change it the most. But assuming you don't need a neck reset, the way you can still change this angle is at the nut, you can file your slots a little deeper, and you can, adjust your saddle up and down. And that is how you adjust your action. Now, you want to adjust your action after you know your truss rod has been adjusted properly. In other words, you want your neck pretty darn straight when you start. Your strings will pull a natural underbow into your neck. They just will for the most part. Now, if you have an overbow situation, then I would say either one of two things. Either your instrument wasn't built properly, which is not unreasonable. I mean, that's a very good possibility. Or you've way over tightened the truss rod and it somehow has created a overbow in your neck. You don't want that for sure. So you want a flat neck to just a very hint of an underbow. And when I say hint, the relief, the people that believe in the relief thing, which I'm not big on it, I'll be honest. The least amount of relief I can get, the better I like it. They're talking in the neighborhood of 10 thousandths to 12 thousandths is your typical relief. In other words, if you held your strings down at your two end frets, and then you measure the gap under the string at one of your other frets in the middle, it should be about 10 to 12 thousandths of an inch. In my situation, I would say that or even less is okay. As long as you have a teeny amount, you're fine, in my opinion. But I don't even like to see very much at all. So my opinion is less is more. That's just my opinion. Everybody can have their own opinion. I don't have a problem. If you think more is better, that's just fine with me. I don't have a problem with that. That's just up to you. Let's see. So really, that's it. And so as far as how to adjust it or whatever, for the most part, you want to make sure it's snug tight. Before you even start, you just want to make sure it's snug tight. In other words, righty tighty, lefty loosey. And lefty loosey, the problem with those two-way truss rods, and you're going to get me on my rant, is that the two-way truss rods tighten up when you go left. And when you go left, they actually pull underbow into your neck. You don't ever need to pull underbow in your neck. Not ever. You just don't. I mean, sure, if you had it built wrong and it had an overbow, okay, that would be your exception. But, I mean, 99.9% of the instruments out there don't have that problem. So you never, for the most part, ever need to pull underbow into a neck. You only need to pull the underbow out of the neck. So you never go lefty on those two-way truss rods. 8 out of 10 of them I see come in this shop, and I'm not exaggerating that number. I'm telling you for sure, that's a black and white number. 8 out of 10 of them that come in this shop have been turned to the left way too far. So I got no use for those two-way truss rods. They should be outlawed in my opinion. In fact, you should go to jail for putting one in an instrument. So there you go. But that's it. Just tighten it to the right until you feel it more or less stop or get real snug, and then maybe just another quarter turn. And that's typically about where you want to adjust them. Now, if you still have too much underbow, you might have to adjust it a little bit more. But you don't go cranking those suckers down. You don't turn it like a whole turn or nothing. It's like a quarter turn, and it'll make a big difference. Okay, Gary Boer asked about my studio mics and recorder, and the truth of the matter is, Gary, I'm almost embarrassed. I don't have anything. I mean, I really don't. This right here that you're seeing is the most complicated thing I got right, in terms of sound for my video purposes. Now, I do have my own recording studio in my man cave, and I got some decent stuff there, but it's nothing that I use on these videos, and that was the way I got it was the gist of your question. On these videos, this is the most complicated mic I have. This is a Blue Yeti, and or high-tech mic, or whatever you want to call it. But it's just a USB mic, and you can get those off of Amazon or whatever, Blue Yeti type mic. And the rest of it is done with the camera by itself. I mean, like literally nothing else. And here's the camera right there. And I mean, I have nothing else. There's no mic, no external mic, no nothing. It's just a Canon T7i. Actually, technically, this one's an 800D, but this is the European version of the T7i. I just got a better price on this. It's exactly the same as the T7i, because I do have a T7i also. And I don't know where that one's at right now. I think it's on a tripod over there somewhere. But anyway, they're the exact same camera. So that literally, because I'm indoors and there's no wind or anything, the microphone on these things work great. And that's all I use. I do not use anything else. There's no secrets hidden anywhere. That's all I have. Excuse me. Okay, that's all the questions that we had from the videos. We've got about 143 viewers on right at the moment. Let me go up here to the top and start scrolling down and see where I can see questions. And again, I'm a slow reader, so it takes me a little while to find everything. Bear with me for a moment. I don't see, okay, here we go. Ronald Coakley, how much is one of your guitars? They're priceless because I don't make them anymore. I was selling them in the neighborhood of $6,500, I think was the last several I sold, I think. But I'm not making any more custom guitars for anyone, mostly just because of the hands thing. I'm just, you know, if I make any more, it's going to be for myself. Here's a question, but there's no question marks on it. I think it's a question. Terry Beeson says, "Hi Jerry, I do leatherworking and would like your input and other mandolin players' input on what you would like to see in a mandolin strap." Well, Terry, you're going to be disappointed with my answer because I like the smallest possible strap I can get. And I'll be truthful and just tell you it's because I'm lazy. I really don't like to futz with a strap when I'm putting instrument away in a case. That's why I always, and I mean only and always, use a string. That's all I use. I use this is a paracord, and I tie, a hangman's noose in it, and I tie a hangman's noose at that end, and that's all I use. Now, this is adjustable, believe it or not. Like if a little kid wants to play my mandolin, I just pull this hangman's noose up like this, and it makes the strap a lot smaller, and then the little kid can play the mandolin, you know. So honestly, that's all I use. I do leather working too. In fact, I used to do a lot of leather working back in my much younger days. I did a lot of it. I made all kinds of stuff with leather working. I've made arrow quivers and belts and purses and you name it, I've made it. Saddle stuff, a lot of saddle stuff. I never made a whole saddle, but I made a lot of different things. Saddle bags, all kinds of stuff. So I get it where you're coming from, Terry, but the truth is I'm not the guy to ask about that because I'm not big into those leather straps and things. I don't like them. For me, narrow, small, tiny is perfect because it's just easy to put it in the case. I see all these other folks, you know, and I see it daily. They come in the shop all the time, and they've got these giant straps, and they're folded just perfect, and they have to be, you know, you have to do all kinds of things to get them to fit in the case, you know, without scratching your instrument and all that. And I don't have to do that with that. I just throw it in the case, I'm done, you know. So there you go, Terry. I'm sorry I'm disappointing you with that answer, but it's the truth. Do you mix deer meat with pig meat? Well, I do, but I don't use the wild pig meat. We mix the deer meat with, we just like buy pork sausage and grind it up and make like hamburgers with the deer meat and the pork sausage. And it works really good. It's very, very tasty, actually. Next question. And I'm looking. Again, if you've asked a question and you don't have a bunch of question marks in front, there's a very good chance I'm going to miss it. So it's better if you put 3 or 4 question marks in front of your question. Travis the Fixer says, I have to say this, the mandolin turned out great, but it doesn't have the Rosa punch. Well, Travis, it's got a nice sound. I'll say that. Do I think it sounds like my mandolin? Not exactly, no, but it's very good. I would definitely give it a solid A. It's a good mandolin. It really is. I like it. I'm not just saying that for the camera. It's a really good mandolin. Very nice mandolin, in fact. But thank you for the vote of confidence there, Travis, on mine. I'm a little partial to mine. I got to be honest. I think the one I'm playing right now is just about as good as it gets. Scott Roberts, maybe you should call your band the Nitpickers. That is the beautiful job you did on the broken neck. Now, how about an Irish jig? You're looking at the wrong guy for that one there, Scott. I can barely play what I can play, and that's not an exaggeration. I barely play at all, in my opinion. Paul Walton, approximately how many hours to repair and refinish the broken mandolin? That much time right there. That's my time card. I work on it 30 minutes at a time, 40 minutes at a time, 20 minutes, 10 minutes at a time. So I just write down my minutes. I have not added it up yet, to be honest. I don't know how much he's going to pay for that, but I bill it at $100 an hour, and I just take the minutes and multiply that out, and by the minute per hour rate is what it amounts to. So if I work on it 31 minutes, you'll be charged for 31 minutes. And so I don't really know yet, but eventually we'll have that figured out here. And plus, I've got more to do now because the finish said, nope, ain't gonna work for you. Billy Porterfield. Hi, Jerry. I'm sorry I keep asking, but is it true there is a possibility of getting more full-length repair videos? I really look forward to those. Well, yeah, I mean, we haven't stopped. I mean, it's just, whatever comes in the door, that's what I make videos on, Billy. And so there'll be one on this Gibson guitar, one on this mandolin, and one on that fiddle. And so, it's just the way it works. And Emery has been really sick lately a lot, so she hasn't been turning them out like crazy, and she's still sick. She pretty much does the long videos for me. David Ratty, Jerry, maybe the nut needed a shim before the neck broke. That's a very good possibility. I thought of that, David, and the only other thing I could think of was that it may have been pinched in the groove that it's in, and it may have been setting up in the air, more or less. That's a possibility. I mean, I really don't know, because honestly, I didn't change that part. I didn't affect it at all, as far as I can tell. It should have used the same nut, and it should have just went back perfectly. It didn't. I don't know why. I really, truly do not know why. But like you said, it could have had a shim under it. It's very possible. May have had. And, when it broke like that, well, that shim went flying probably. Michael 2X, do you have a video about making a guitar saddle from antler, starting with cutting the blank out of the finished saddle? Not really, Michael. I've shown bits and pieces of it over the years in a lot of videos, but which ones I couldn't tell you. I will just tell you this much, that the most complicated part of making a saddle, whether it's for a guitar or whether it's for a mandolin, and it's more complicated on a mandolin, I'll tell you that for sure, is to get it straight and square. Because there's no such thing as straight and square deer antler. It's all curved. I mean, like every bit of it's curved. From where it attaches to the head, it just curves. Everything's curved on it. And so getting it straight and square, and yet doing that and cutting away the porosity part and leaving the best solid part, that's the hard thing to do, by far. Once you get it straight and square, then it's just as easy to work with as any other material. You know, you can make them out of wood, and they're much easier to make out of wood because wood's easy to make it straight and square. But once you get it straight and square, once you get your blank, then cutting the rest of it's a piece of cake. Anyway, but that's a good idea for a video, I guess, Michael. Maybe you'll even see that in the Christmas. You just never know. Because I seriously have not decided what video I'm going to put out in the Christmas, in the middle of our Christmas program. By the way, the word I was searching for with the boys down there at the acoustic shop when they brought me that mandolin was, collaboration. I almost forgot it again. I started to say cooperation. That's not it. It's collaboration. That's the only word I was looking for. I just couldn't find it the last time I was talking about it. Anyway, that's just my brain and how it works. Rick Rogers, what are your thoughts on using 5A figured black walnut for back sides of a mandolin? Well, I don't know exactly what 5A figured means, other than I'm assuming it's a very high grade, like AAA type thing or whatever. Highly figured walnut would make a decent mandolin. I think it will sound, which is a good thing. I think it's going to sound a little extra woody. It could borderline on the boxy because of the walnut, but I have heard a few mandolins made with walnut and they sound fine. So I don't think it'd be a problem. Why don't I do that? I try to stay more traditional, I guess you'd say, and the traditional wood is maple for the most part. Now, I have used sycamore a number of times, and I mostly did the sycamore as an experiment from my childhood days, because whenever I would take firewood that was made out of sycamore and tap it together, you'd hear it echo all the way down the valley. You could take two other kinds of wood, like oak or cedar or, walnut or anything, and it would just go clunk. But you hit that sycamore together and it could go ting, and you just hear it go all the way down the valley and come back and echo. So that's why I made my mandolins out of sycamore. And in my opinion, sycamore is an incredibly good wood to make them out of. Nobody does it but me, or at least that I know of. And I would tell you the reason more people don't use sycamore, the main reason is sycamore is a real pain. It's a nightmare to dry. It will not dry flat. If you've got a flat board, when it gets done drying, it's going to be like that. That's just the truth of sycamore. It doesn't dry pretty. Okay. But I think your walnut idea is probably okay. I don't think that'd be a problem. I think it scrolled up on me while I was talking there. Wow, it did. It scrolled up a lot. I don't even know where it went. Okay, I'm finding a couple of the questions I answered already. Well, I don't see the question on the walnut. That's where I wanted to go back to. I see the one on the guitar saddle. But anyway, the next question I see from the guitar saddle, maybe I missed it the first time, was 1788 Productions is asking, what should the action measurement be for each mandolin string for the best setup? Well, that's kind of a loaded question. And the truth is, I don't have a number. I do it more by feel and things. I use a pick, believe it or not, for a mandolin. Now, I don't do that on a guitar. On a guitar, I have numbers. But on a mandolin, I basically use a pick. I use a Martin thin pick, and it should be fairly snug, it's about a 17,000, 18 thousandths thick pick, and it should be fairly snug, fairly tight on the E strings, and snug-ish on the G string. In other words, you can slide it in fairly easy on the G string, but on the E string, it ought to pick the string up just a tiny amount. So that's how I do it. I just do it by feel. So I don't have exact numbers, but I can tell you that it would be less than it's probably in the neighborhood of 12 thousandths on the E string and probably in the neighborhood of 15 thousandths on the G string. And, you just kind of slope across there. So that gave you a pretty good idea. Now that's at the first fret. Now at the, back further, I don't really have a black and white way I measure this. I just take one of those purple Tortex picks, which are a 1.14 millimeter, which equates to roughly 45 thousandths or something like that. And I pretty much want that holding that at about the 9th fret. I've had it holding it all the way at the 12th fret. But, it just depends how you play, whether or not you want it that low or not. But around the 7th to 9th fret, if it'll hold that 1.14 millimeter pick, you're just fine. So that's the numbers I use on a mandolin. I'm sorry I don't have better numbers for you. I'm scrolling through here. Bruce Decker says he has one of Gary Boer's CDs. He got it from me because Gary had sent me some. And so Bruce is saying he likes it. It's a good one. Let's see here. Yeah, the Boer's CD is really good in my opinion. Moving on down through here, looking for question marks. I'm not seeing very many. HOXOH123. I forgot where he said he's from now, but I think it's over at like Sweden or Switzerland or somewhere like that, I think is where he said he's from. Sorry if I got that wrong, if it's Denmark or wherever. But anyway, he says, what do I wish for Christmas? You know what? Honestly, for myself, I don't much care. I wish this world would get straightened out. That's what I really wish. I mean, honestly, that would be my favorite thing in the whole world, if this world could get straightened out. I would love that. And I'm talking about the wars, I'm talking about the economies, and all those kinds of things. I would love that. Truly, for myself, I've got no wish at all. I truly don't. Lon has a question. He says, Jerry, I really enjoy your ideas on how to do things. In my opinion, let's see, will you do more? Because I have learned so much, especially the down-to-earth reasons why you do it this way. Well, yeah, Lon, there's always going to be more and more videos. Like I said, you're going to be seeing several coming out on these 3 instruments I just finished. And I think they go into pretty good depth. I think you'll enjoy seeing them. George French is asking, what are your thoughts on using quarter-sawn Douglas fir for a guitar or fiddle? Now, the truth is on that one, I don't know much about that. I don't think I've ever had a Douglas fir thing in here. I would say you could probably use it for the top because it's an evergreen tree, I believe, right? Being a fir. You could probably use it for the tops, and that's what your question's about. It would probably be okay. It might be borderline stiff. I don't really know that much about it, to be honest with you. Like, for instance, most evergreen trees you can use for a top, but there are some that are very hard, like yellow pine is very hard, especially after it dries. It's as hard as oak. I mean, so, you got to be careful of that. You want to know, how does it dry? Can you still dent it with your fingernail? And if you can, I would say it'll probably be fine. If fir dries crazy hard where you couldn't even dent it with your fingernail, then maybe not. You hate to go through all that work and then find out that it's kind of a stiff sounding, tinny sounding instrument after doing all that work. And if you can't dent it, it's going to sound tinny. I'll pretty much tell you that. Next question. Something just popped here in the shop. I don't know what that was. It sounded electrical, though. Fernando Ledesma Ledesma, I don't know how to pronounce it, I'm sorry. How much do you charge for fret leveling or crowning? Well, Fernando, I do every single thing by the clock. I charge $100 an hour, and so I work on it for however many minutes, and that's what you get charged. So I don't have a set fee for anything, but typically your full setup typically takes anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. Now I can do them less. It depends on what the instrument needs. If it doesn't need much, it may only take me 30 minutes. But it can go anywhere from 30 minutes, I would say, to 2 to 3 hours, depending on, and we're talking at $100 an hour. So you could be into it for $200 or $300, or you might be into it for less than 100. It just depends on what that instrument needs. Hope that helps with the answer. Moving down here, looking for more question marks. Rick Rogers is asking, Jerry, what are your thoughts on using 5/8 figured walnut? Okay, well, there's that question. So these things got out of sequence because I know I didn't miss that many questions. Wow, that's weird. Well, anyway, I think I've answered that. I think the walnut would probably be fine. Larry T, what things should someone be looking for when making the first time used mandolin purchase? Well, that's a real good question. Well, see, it really is going to depend a lot on your budget, on what you can spend. A lot of it's going to depend on that. But if you're trying to go inexpensive as possible, then the more solid wood you can get and that you can afford, the better typically. So in other words, you want a solid wood top if you can, rather than a laminated wood top, or what I refer to as a plywood top, because that's what it really is. It's a plywood top versus a solid, natural wood solid top. I would lean toward, spruce, redwood, or western cedar for the top if you can. Western cedar and redwood are in my opinion, you're about your best sounding tops, really. Even though they may be on a lesser expensive instrument, if it's a carved instrument and it's got those kinds of tops, I would not shy away from it because I think you'd be ahead overall. But I would also think about the weight. Sometimes some of those real cheap instruments just weigh a ton, and if it's real extra heavy, compared to other mandolins, more than likely it's not going to vibrate all that well. You want to look at the thickness of the body. If it's more than about 1 7/16 inches, or just say 1.5 inches, if it's more thick than 1.5 inches, you probably ought to shy away from it because it's going to sound boxy instead of woody. See, the people get that confused. They think boxy sounds woody. Boxy to me is just like it sounds. If you put strings on a cardboard box and played it, it's going to have a deep sound, but it's not a sound that I care that much about. So, anyway, the thickness of the sides has a lot to do with that. You get them too thick and it starts to sound boxy. So you want to try to keep your sides, fairly narrow. Let me just, as an example, I'll just measure these. I'm going to say these are going to be in the neighborhood of 1.5 inches, but I mean, they might be. Technically, these are 1 3/4 inches, but that's the, including the binding and everything, but that'll give you some idea. The sides themselves are measuring between there about 1 7/16 inches. So, or actually a little less than that. So if you're talking about the whole thing, about 1 3/4 inches is probably a good number. So, but I wouldn't play one. If it was 2 inches, you'd probably want to shy away from that. 2 inches or greater, let's just say it that way. So those are some things you could look for. And then, your action and all that, if you look at it and these action's really high here, then you need to look here and go, can this be lowered? And if it can't be lowered, I'd shy away from it, you know. That's a real important thing right there. What else in terms of just general things? I mean, I could talk about tuning keys, but for the most part, the tuning keys are not a kind of a moot point because you can always change those if you really want to. Your tailpiece could be changed. Also, I'm talking about more of the things that you can't change on the instruments, you know. Those are things you have to live with. I don't know. I think what I've said so far is about right. You know, I don't know. Hopefully that helps you. Sorry if it didn't. Let's see. Looking down through here. Gary Parker is asking, hi Jerry, have you ever worked on a high pressure laminate instrument like a guitar or ukulele? Can they be fixed at all? Well, Gary, I've worked on a lot of laminated instruments. I don't know if I would call them high pressure. I'm not sure what that means. I've worked on a lot of laminated instruments, so I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question because I'm not familiar with high pressure laminate. Jim Page, Jerry, is the guitar world. There's a lot of discussion and opinions about instrument weight. Most seem to prefer lightweight. Would lighter weight affect sustain in a bad way? Your thoughts? Well, no. See, if the body's lightweight, you're doing good. Now, you can have weight in your peg head and weight in your tailpiece, and you're still fine. But you do typically want a lightweight body. The neck is okay if it's a little heavy. But the body itself, it ought to be lightweight. If you get those bodies heavy and thick and all that, then you're not going to get the sound you're looking for, I don't think. But you can add sustain by making a very solid tailpiece, a very solid peg head, in a somewhat weighted neck, and you're doing fine there. But the body should be light. That's my opinion. It scrolled a lot. I'm not sure how far it went. I could see it scroll, though, out of the corner of my eye. Wow, it must have scrolled a long way again. Oh my gosh, I'm seeing all kinds of questions. It must have scrolled a long way. Wow. Well, I'm seeing questions up above now that I didn't answer that weren't there a while ago. How does this stuff happen? Lon, I don't know. I'm just picking up somewhere. I'm not sure where I'm at. I'm sorry if I'm missing your question. It's not intentional. It's just the way this thing is scrolling. Lon is asking, Jerry, I really enjoy your ideas on how to do things. Will you do more? Well, I answered that one. I'm sorry. Will I do more videos like that? Yeah, and I mentioned I will. Okay, well, maybe it didn't scroll as far as I thought. Oh my gosh, it's really hard when this thing scrolls. It's hard for me to catch back up. Okay, Raz 1500. Does your thin strap rub the finish off of the mandolin scroll? It never has. It never has. That's the truth. I've been using them my 40 years, and I don't think I've ever seen any mark on the scroll from the strap. That's just me talking, but I truly don't think I've ever seen any scroll or any scratching at all. Gordon Bartlett is asking, maybe the player was so mad at the poor action on the mandolin from the low nut that he smashed it. I think it got smashed in shipping, pretty sure. Terry Beeson, have you ever used a dog bone from the pet aisle to make a saddle or nut? No, I haven't, but I'm sure it would probably be fine. I'm going to turn on my heater. Sorry. It's getting kind of chilly on my feet down here on this concrete floor in the shop. It's not that cool in the whole shop, but it's kind of cool at the floor. So no, I haven't used that kind of dog bone, but I mean, I'm sure you could. Those are typically cow or pig bones, I'm pretty sure. But bone is bone for the most part, and as long as it's big enough to make your saddle out of, it would probably be just fine. Let's see, moving down, Ronald Coakley. How long has Caleb been working with you, and does he still? No, Caleb left, I don't know, about a year ago, I guess now. I'm not really sure. No, it wasn't quite a year ago, because he left just about a year ago, now that I think about it. It's been just about a year that he's been gone. So anyway, Caleb was a good guy, and he worked with me for about a year and a half. He's got his own channel, Caleb Mills Guitars. You should check him out. Caleb's a good guy. All right, I'm moving on here. I'm trying to get through this because we're about out of time. The stock options report is, can you recommend a quicker way to melt binding pieces for repair other than acetone? Well, no, I don't think I can, honestly. Again, we're talking about a more complicated subject than I think I even want to get into, but the old bindings that, if you're talking I always say acetate-based bindings, but most people call them celluloid, I think, celluloid type bindings. If you're talking about the old bindings, those melt great with acetone. Talking about the newer PVC type bindings, acetone barely affects them, in my opinion. I mean, it works, but barely. So that's why I have gone to the canopy glue for the newer bindings. And it works on the old bindings too. But anytime I'm gluing plastic anymore, I use canopy glue. And it's called Zap Canopy Glue Formula 560. This stuff it's kind of, if you just poured it out, you would think it's just Elmer's glue or something. That's what it kind of looks like. But it seems to hold plastic to wood really well. I really like it. It's great, and it's water cleanup. So if I was giving you a recommendation on how to repair binding, it would be with that, because that won't melt your finish or anything. In other words, you can pour this all over the whole top of a guitar, wipe it right off. You won't have any problem. You pour a little acetone or a little bit of that model airplane glue, which is what they used to use all the time to glue bindings on, that type of glue, like Ducco cement, or there's some other ones too. I forget what I use. I can't remember the name of it right now. But anyway, those kinds of glues with the acetone base or acetate base glues, those will melt your finishes and screw up everything. That kind of glue, the canopy glue, it doesn't hurt anything. So for me, for binding repair, this is my go-to glue nowadays. This stuff works great. Anyway, moving on, I'll just take a couple of more questions and then we're going to call it good. It looks like there's a lot of questions though, so I'm sorry, I'm going to have to leave some of them out. I apologize. Gary Parker is asking, have you ever worked on a high pressure? Oh, I'm sorry. Again, these have all scrolled out of sequence. They're not in the same sequence. That's crazy. I see another one I answered. Somebody's asking me what cameras I use for the videos, and I mentioned that just earlier in this video, that this is a Canon T7i. Canon T7i, and that's all I use. I don't use any external mics or anything, but keep in mind, I'm inside out of the wind. These Canon cameras by themselves work great. Their microphones work great, everything. That's all I use. I don't use anything else. Paul Akers, why do you need a guitar nut if you have a 0 fret? Confusing. Well, the nut on a 0 fret guitar, now you don't confuse the issues. A nut on a 0 fret guitar just keeps the string spacing. That's all it does. The slots go deeper than your 0 fret. And all they do is just keep your strings on the fret where they should be. If you took the nut away, your strings could free float across your 0 fret and mess up. So that's the reason why you need a nut on a 0 fret guitar. How do you get a good radius? How do you get a good fretboard or fret measurement on a radius fingerboard using the in-size taper gauge? Well, you just take one string at a time. I don't have any problem with that. You just, you angle the gauge to the proper angle of the thing. I'm not sure why that would be a problem. You can't measure them all at once, but you couldn't measure them all at once anyway with a taper gauge because the thing tapers. So you just take one string at a time, and I don't have any issues with that. I do it all the time. Been doing it for years now, ever since I found my taper gauge. So I'm not sure how to answer that. Sorry. Well, someone there asked a question, why should we watch Caleb? But I'm not going to answer that one because Caleb's a good guy, and he learned a lot of stuff from me, and he's got a lot to learn, just like anybody has when they start out. But Caleb's a good guy. He would treat you right, and he may be the guy after me. You never know. You just never know. That takes over what the same kinds of things I do. I don't know. But he learned a lot while he was here, and he was very good to teach. So many people get so defensive when you're teaching them something. They'll say, well, yeah, but I think we should do this, or I think we should try that, or this or that, And Caleb didn't do that. He would say, oh, okay, I get what you're saying, and he would understand it, and he would do that, and things would turn out just fine. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with somebody questioning an idea or a process or something, or even, I can make a mistake, and Caleb caught some of my mistakes, and that's perfectly fine. I got no problem with that. But when you're trying to learn something, you should listen to the person that's teaching it. Like just as a typical example, like, I'm sure you've had people ask your opinion on something, and then they sound like they're legitimately wanting your opinion. Then you explain it to them, and then they go, I don't like, they don't like. You can tell they don't like that answer, and so they're going to go do their own thing anyway. So when you're learning something from scratch, you ought to pay attention to the person teaching what you learn, the subject. That's it for today. I'm rambling. So thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed seeing the reconstructed Larrivee mandolin. It ain't broke no more. We'll see you probably next Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully we'll have a video released this evening. Goodbye.